first time I stepped into the county morgue, I told myself I was lucky. Most people don't get handed a job straight out of community college, especially not one with benefits. And if I'm being honest, I didn't even care that it was nights. I liked nights. Nights were quiet, predictable, and they didn't ask questions. That's what I believed. The building sat behind the hospital like it was ashamed to be connected to it. Barely visible from the main road, just a squat concrete block with one lonely security light that flickered like it was tired. And the air around it always smelled like wet pavement, even when it hadn't rained. My first night, my supervisor, a tired-looking guy named Lynn, met me by the back entrance. He was in his 50s, had a mustache that looked like it belonged in a different decade. He spoke like every word cost him money. Rule number 1, he said, unlocking the door, don't ever eat in here. I forced a laugh and told him I wasn't planning to, but Lynn didn't smile. Rule number 2, he continued, stepping inside. If you hear the drawers sliding by themselves, no you didn't. I stopped walking and stared at him confused, but Lynn finally looked at me with flat eyes like he'd already seen too much to care if I believed him. You'll do fine, he said, just keep your head down. Do the paperwork, don't go looking for anything. The morgue was colder than I expected, not just the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that settles into your bones like it's trying to stay. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the walls were white, but not clean white. More like exhausted white. Lynn showed me the basics. Where the intake forms were, how to label personal belongings, where the keys were kept, and then he showed me the main cooler, a steel door with a heavy handle, and when he opened it, the air that came out smelled like metal and something faintly sweet. Inside were rows of drawers. Stainless steel compartments stacked like filing cabinets, each one holding someone's last address. Lynn tapped the clipboard against his palm and told me I'd mostly be alone. That sometimes the coroner came in and sometimes the transport guys, but I was here to watch the place. Keep things logged and help with intakes. When I repeated intakes, he said bodies like he was telling me the weather, and I swallowed hard and nodded. Then Lynn walked me back to the small office attached to the morgue, a cramped room with a desk, an old computer, a chair that squeaked, and a security monitor showing 4 grainy camera feeds, one pointed in the hallway outside the cooler door. Another showed the loading bay, another showed the embalming room, which looked like a stainless steel nightmare. And the last one showed a corner of the office itself. Lynn set down a key ring and told me it had to stay on me. Then he leaned in like he was about to tell me something important. And listen, he said quietly, if you ever see a toe tag that doesn't have a name on it, you call me. My mouth went dry and I asked why a toe tag wouldn't have a name. And Lynn stared at me for a second longer than normal before saying, because it's not supposed to. And then he left the door shut behind him with a heavy click. Suddenly it was just me. At first it was boring, the kind of boring that makes you stare at the clock and wonder if time is playing a joke on you. So I checked the logs, read old procedure manuals, scrolled my phone, and every now and then glanced at the security monitor and felt my stomach tighten for no reason. The building made noises, which was normal because old buildings always do. But the noises here didn't sound like an old building. They sounded like movement, soft metallic ticks, a low groan, the faintest scrape like someone dragging a fingernail down steel. I told myself it was the cooling system, the ventilation pipes expanding. Anything around 1:40 a.m. the phone rang the landline, and it was so loud in the quiet that I jumped so hard my chair squealed. I stared at the phone like it was a snake because nobody told me the morgue phone would ring, but I picked it up slowly and said morgue intake. For a second there was nothing but static, then breathing. Slow, wet breathing like someone holding their mouth too close to the receiver. I said hello again, the breathing stopped and a voice came through, soft and low, almost like a whisper. He's awake. My skin prickled and I demanded to know who it was, but the line went dead and I sat there holding the receiver, frozen, heart pounding like I'd just been chased. I set the phone down carefully and looked at the security monitor and the feed showing the hallway outside the cooler, thought fibbing. Half a second I put a self, some nerve, some pear, some road to the ground, everybody quote across the front. Or what I named for and scored. The hallway was empty. I pulled myself on this time. my eyes were playing tricks, that I was psyching myself out because of Len's weird rules. So I stood up, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped into the hallway. The air felt different out there, thicker like the cold had weight, and the cooler door sat at the end of the hall reflecting the overhead light. The handle still and the steel smooth. I stood there for a minute listening, and there was nothing. No scraping, no drawers, no breathing. So I let out a shaky laugh and turned around. And that's when I heard it. A soft click behind me. I spun back and saw the cooler handle had moved just slightly, like someone inside had pressed against it, and my body locked up so hard I couldn't move or blink. The handle moved again, not much, but enough. Enough to make it clear it wasn't the building, wasn't pipes, wasn't my imagination. Something was inside, and it was trying to get out. My mouth went dry and I forced myself to step back. And then the cooler door rattled, not violently like a monster movie, but like a tired hand testing the door, like someone weak and confused. A sound came from inside, a voice, not loud or dramatic, just small, like someone speaking through a cracked throat. Help me. I backed away so fast my heel caught on the floor mat and I nearly fell, my flashlight shaking in my hand, and the voice came again. Please. I'm cold. My brain screamed at me to run, but another part of me, some stupid human part, wanted to do the unthinkable, wanted to open it, wanted to check, cause what if someone was still alive? And my hand hovered near the key ring until I remembered Len's flat eyes and his warning about the toe tag with no name. I turned around and bolted back to the office, slammed the door, locked it, and called Len. He answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting. You saw it, he said. My voice shook as I told him something was in the cooler and it was talking, and I thought someone was alive in there, but Len was quiet for a long moment before saying, do not open that door, I whispered. What is it? And Len exhaled slowly and said, it's not alive. It's not dead. There's something in between. And it lies. I felt sick and asked how he knew. And Len's voice dropped. Because 3 years ago, a new guy opened it. I swallowed hard and asked what happened, and Len's silence was heavy before he said, and we never found all of him. My stomach flipped as I stared at the security monitor, the hallway feed still and the cooler door not moving, and I waited for Len to tell me what to do. But instead he said, stay in the office, lock the door if it calls you. Don't answer. I repeated, it calls you. And Len's voice cracked slightly, the first sign he was scared. It calls you like someone you love. He said it uses voice as it learns, it gets better every time. My throat tightened and I asked what to do if it got out. And Len paused before saying something that made my blood run cold. It doesn't get out. It gets invited. The call ended, and I sat there staring at the cooler feed like it was a live grenade while the clock ticked. 2:11 a.m., 2:12 a.m., 2:13 a.m., and then the camera feed flickered again. This time the hallway wasn't empty. A figure stood in front of the cooler door, and even though the camera quality was trash, I could see enough. There was a person or something shaped like one standing with its back to the camera, head tilted slightly like it was listening. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the screen, and saw it was naked, its skin pale and waxy like it had been soaked in bleach, its limbs too long, its shoulders too narrow. And around its ankle was a toe tag, a white tag swinging blank with no name. The figure lifted its head slowly and turned toward the camera. My whole body went numb because its face wasn't right. It looked like someone tried to make a human face from memory, the eyes too dark and too wide, the mouth stretched into a soft smile like it was trying to look friendly. Then it stepped closer, one slow step and another, and the camera feed glitched as it got close until the face filled the screen and the monitor went black for a second. When it came back, the hallway was empty again. I sat frozen, barely breathing, and then the landline rang again. I didn't want to answer, but it kept ringing loud and sharp, so finally I picked it up and whispered hello. For a moment there was nothing, then a voice that made my heart stop. My mother's voice, sweet and familiar, and warmed me hope. She said softly, and I nearly cried from the shock as I breathed Mama, before remembering Len's words and snapping my mouth shut. The voice on my front deck channeled a breaking me. I opened the door station, as cold and couldn't breathe, and tears for a moment, as either no or no, wasn't her, the best it sounded exactly like her. And little pauses, The softness. Voice just a memory please act and what I saw that came new. I need you. I squeezed my eyes shut and then the voice changed. Just slightly, like a mask slipping. The warp disappeared and the words became sharper. Hurry, it said. Still in my mother's voice, but wrong now. Open the door. The phone line crackled and I heard something else, a faint tapping like fingernails against glass. I opened my eyes and looked at the office window. The small glass panel in the door looking out in the hallway, and something was tapping on it slowly. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't see clearly because the hallway light was dim. But I could see a shape, a face pressed close to the glass and the outline of a smile. The voice on the phone whispered, "I'm right here." I dropped the receiver and the line stayed open. The voice still breathing softly through the speaker while the tapping continued and the office door handle moved slightly like it was testing it. I grabbed the key ring and backed away shaking, and the handle moved again and again, and then the voice, still my mother, began to cry soft sobs. "Meal, please." I pressed my hands to my ears and whispered to myself, "Not real, not real, not real." But the sobbing stopped instantly and the voice changed completely, becoming deeper, not human. A low, wet sound like something talking through a throat full of water. "Open," it said. The office lights flickered, the monitor feed glitched, and in the corner of the office camera feed I saw something that turned my blood to ice. Behind me, in the reflection of the dark computer screen, a pale figure standing inside the office right behind my chair. I whipped around and saw nothing. But when I looked back at the monitor, the office feed was still showing. It's still standing there like the camera could see it, but I couldn't. And then the figure on the monitor leaned forward, its mouth opening wider than a human mouth should. And I heard its voice not through the phone and not through the door, but directly behind me. "Ready or not?" I screamed and slammed myself against the far wall, nearly tripping over the chair as the office door rattled violently like something was throwing its weight into it. The tapping turning into banging and the phone line screaming with static, and in the middle of all that noise everything stopped. Dead silence, no banging, no tapping, no static. The light stabilized, the monitors returned to normal, and I stood there panting, drenched in sweat until I heard real footsteps, heavy boots. And the back entrance opened and Len stepped inside breathless, holding a flashlight and a small duffel bag. He looked at me and nodded like he'd expected to find me alive but wasn't sure you didn't open it. He said, and I shook my head and Len exhaled hard. "Good," he muttered. I asked him what it was, my voice hoarse, and Len walked to the office window and stared into the hallway, speaking quietly like the building itself might be listening. "Some things don't belong in a hospital," he said, "but they end up here anyway." He opened the duffel bag and pulled out something that looked like a thick roll of black cloth, and when I asked what it was, he didn't answer, just walked in the hallway, and I followed, terrified but unable to stop myself. Len stopped in front of the cooler door and put his hand on the handle, and my heart stopped until he held up a finger to silence me and whispered, "You hungry?" I stared at him like he'd lost his mind, but he raised his voice slightly and repeated it to the cooler like it was a person, and after a moment the voice came from inside again, soft and weak and human. "Yes." Len nodded slowly like he'd confirmed something, reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag of raw meat that turned my stomach. He tossed it onto the floor and stepped back, and for a few seconds nothing happened, until the cooler handle moved slowly and Len didn't flinch. And the door opened just a crack and cold air spilled out like breath. Something thin and pale slid out from the gap, not walking but crawling like a starving animal, moving too fast, grabbing the meat with a hand that looked like it had too many joints before pulling itself back inside. And the door shut. Len turned to me, his face gray. "Now you understand?" He said. I couldn't speak, couldn't blink, and Len went back to the office and started writing on a form like it was just another Tuesday. When I finally asked what happened, now he looked up and said, "You finish your shift and you go home and you pray it doesn't remember you." My stomach sank and I asked if it remembered, and Len met my eyes. "It remembers the ones who almost opened the door," he said. "The rest of my shift passed in a blur of lights on me, staring at the monitors, nothing happening again. No calls, no tapping, no movement, just silence. Until 6 a.m. when my relief arrived and I left without saying much." The sky outside was pale and sickly, like it hadn't fully decided to be morning yet. And I drove home with my hands clenched around the steering wheel, checking my rearview mirror over and over like I expected to see something in the backseat. When I got to my apartment, I ran inside and locked the door behind me, telling myself it was over, telling myself Len was right, telling myself I didn't open it, didn't invite it, and I was safe. That night I tried to sleep and couldn't, because every time I closed my eyes I heard the cooler door handle moving, click, click, click. And at 2:13 a.m. my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification, even though I hadn't gotten a call. My hands shook as I opened it, and the audio was mostly static, then breathing, slow wet breathing, and a voice soft and familiar like my mother whispering, "Mio." I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and the voice continued, "I'm cold," and in the background of the voicemail I heard a faint metallic scraping like a drawer sliding open before the message ended. I stared at my phone frozen, and then I heard it from inside my apartment, from the bathroom down the hall, a soft sound. A handle turning slowly, testing, like something was waiting for me to invite it in. And in the silence I heard a whisper through the crack into the bathroom door, "Ready or not?"